Hey, welcome to the Distorted Dialogue podcast on the Metal Institute of Thrashology. Thanks for coming today, Joe.
Well, thanks for having me, Mike.
Man, it's all a pleasure. I'm so stoked. I've been a huge fan of you for years, and whether it's your Alcatraz stuff, your solo stuff, your Tower of Babel, man, you do it all.
I'm, I'm doing my best.
How do you fit it all in with teaching at Berkeley and touring? And it gotta be a true struggle to juggle all these things.
Well, I mean, it gets kind of crazy with like Alcatraz is like it'll be like a crazy semester. Like in the fall semester, Alcatraz has a European, like I think some dates in Scandinavia and then over to Europe. So I'll be away from the college for a few weeks. I think like something like three. But luckily one of those weeks is during Thanksgiving.
Okay.
So the college is closed. So I have to do like make up all this work. So basically, what happens? And this I did this like last fall as well. I pretty much the semester starts in the beginning of September, and I start working 6 days a week from other than touring. I work 6 days a week from September until the holidays, until Christmas.
Yeah, I tell you what, you might be one of the hardest working dudes in metal.
Well, I'm giving it a shot. But I love it. It's all guitar related. So I mean, I love working at the college. I love touring. I love making records. I like doing interviews. It's fun.
Yeah.
And I can't complain. That, as I always say, it beats working.
Yeah, I don't blame you one bit. So I was listening to your new Days of Thunder, the lead single off of it, the self-titled. I really enjoyed it, and I'll be honest, I really like the car effects in the beginning, or maybe motorcycle.
Yeah, I think it's a bike. Yeah, that the drummer, he rides a bike. I do not. You know what I mean? And so that was his idea.
Yeah,
That was his idea. The whole bike thing in the beginning. So yeah, and it fits good that like they had like the bike thing in the video and like this kind of Cold War kind of vibe. That's
yeah.
and almost like a retro kind of Cold War kind of vibe to the video. So it shook out. It seems to be shaking out okay.
It shaked out just fine, Joe. But how do you still find so much inspiration with all that you've done? I mean, it still sounds so fresh.
Well, one thing that's encouraging, like, thank you so much. That's really nice of you to say. And one thing that's encouraging is, I'm very dedicated to my craft, and I love to play, and I play all the time. And I'm still excited about guitar. To me, it's like being 15 years old for like the rest of your life. So
Yeah.
so uh, so so yeah, so and and a lot of times I'm here in my workroom where I spend most of my time, and I'll just sit down and I start playing, and maybe I'm just playing, working on various kinds of shred type bits, and then all of a sudden something comes to me. Could be a riff that ends up on the Tower of Babel or an Alcatraz tune. Could be like a cool like neoclassical like arpeggio thing that ends up on my solo record. Yeah, in fact, I was just on sabbatical from the college. What is sabbatical? It's where you get paid for an entire semester, but you have to have a project. You know what I mean? Yeah, but yeah, like so I was on sabbatical from January up until May, and I did some Alcatraz recording, and I did a brand new solo record.
Okay. So
And
the
yeah,
Alcatraz is coming out in 26, I heard.
yeah, the new Alcatraz will be out like next year, you know what I mean? So we'll start in on that after the dust settles. and I've already got plenty of tunes for that. I mean, I write stuff all the time, and for me, it just kind of comes to me. It's not like I sit down and say, "Well, Alcatraz is doing a record, I better start writing stuff." It just kind of, I just kind of all of a sudden I'm playing, I'm practicing, I'm shredding, and then all of a sudden a riff comes to me, or a cool melody comes to me, or something comes to me, and it's like, okay, well, looks like I'm in the middle of writing a tune now.
That sounds like a bad problem to have, right?
Yeah, yeah. Like and I'm really very pleased because my like the last bunch of records I've done, my last three solo records, Diabolical Ferocity, Symphonic Onslaught, and the Dark Lord Rises. Plus, the last few Alcatraz and now the Tower of Babel record, my best work, some of my best work to date. So it's very gratifying for being at it for like, so long and and you doing your best stuff. So, like everybody, I'm just trying to get better.
Yeah, I was listening. I went back and listened to the 2023 Alcatraz record. I forget the title of it.
I think it was,
Prisoners?
Take No Prisoners.
Take No Prisoners. I thought it was going to be Prisoners of War, but I couldn't remember. I got a memory issue. But anyways, it was a great album. I loved it in 23. It sounds great in 24. And I think like because you're a neoclassical shredder, just like Malmsteen, it seems like almost the catalog just continually flows. And it's really nice that Alcatraz can brought you in to not change any of their sound. There was really no evolution, but it seemed to get like fresher, you know?
Yeah, well, they brought like originally they brought me in. I started when Graham was in the band, back
Okay.
in 2019, and they had that like they had sent me an email saying, hey, we're going to relaunch Alcatraz with original members Jimmy Waldo and Graham Bonnet. Are you interested? And I said, sure. Absolutely, and it just kind of went from there. And what did they want? They wanted somebody that played in the style of Yngwie Malmsteen and Richie Blackmore, and of course that's my thing. And so for me it was ideal. And it's nice to be I mean, because first Yngwie and then Steve Vai, so it's nice to be part of the lineage. And they also brought me in because that because I like in comparison to both Ingve and Steve, I'm much more of a metal dude, and my writing style and playing style is quite a bit heavier and more aggressive.
Yeah.
So they also wanted like to have Alcatraz not only for fans of like that were fans of like older Alcatraz stuff, for Ingve fans or Michael Schenker fans or Rainbow fans, but if you liked Accept and Saxon and and Priest and Maiden, you'd also like some of the Alcatraz stuff. So kind of like meddling up, like making it more of a metal version of the thing.
Yeah, and I think it was great. Like, I do agree with you that the aggression is welcomed, and I think that's what gives like a modern sound to that last Alcatraz album. The production was great; it had a harder edge to it, and it sounds like your Tower of Babel is going to have that as well.
Yeah, Tower of Babel is much more. It's not quite as aggressive. I mean, it almost walks the line between like a hard rock record and a metal record, and it's very with Tower of Babel direction wise, it's very Rainbow, Deep Purple, like that kind of thing. Yeah, so it's very much in that kind of vein. And so, if fans of metal and classic European style hard rock are going to like it.
Oh, I can't wait for it to come out, especially because I forgot to mention that you were also in a Richie Blackmore uh, Deep Purple band as well, right?
Yeah, yeah, I have two. I play in a purple band, and then I have another band that plays mainly rainbow stuff. Yeah, that and the rainbow band, like so, the purple band's called Stormbringer, and we play fairly regularly. And same thing. My rainbow band's called Black Knight's Castle. In fact, the dude that plays drums in the rainbow band also plays in Dawkins.
Okay. I speaking of Dawkins, I just saw the Lynch Mob a couple weeks ago, and man, George Lynch is still on top of his game too. That guy's a beast.
Yeah, nice to see. And George is like a grandfather now. You know what I mean? And he's still out there destroying, which is very, very cool.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
they had he had that group Paralandria with him. Paralandra. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but there's a
No,
young
no.
I'll send the record over to you in Instagram. But the young lady who she performs on stage with some George Lynch, the lead guitarist, lead singer, and she can shred just like him. Really impressive work.
Nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Where are you located at?
I'm out of Pittsburgh. I know you're Boston.
I'm from New York originally, as you could hear, but yeah, no, I've played in the Berg many times. I played in the Berg a bunch of times, and of course, gone to Primanti Brothers. You can't go to the
Yeah.
Berg without that. And it's a cool city. Very very nice when you're coming over the bridge, and the two stadiums are right there and everything. Yeah, yeah, Pittsburgh's cool.
We definitely want to have you back. I'll tell you that. Hopefully, we'll get you or Alcatraz.
Yeah, Alcatraz was there back. I want to say, might have been like March of 2024 with Girls School and Lillian Axe. I forget the name of the venue, but it was one venue where they had like a larger venue attached to it. But then we ended up playing the smaller club because it wasn't super. Ticket sales weren't like massive enough to open up the big room. But it was awesome because it was like this the smaller club version of the place, and where everybody's like right on top of you, which I love that kind of thing.
Oh yeah. So you would prefer playing smaller clubs than big stadiums because of the
Yeah,
intimacy?
well, I like playing small places. The other thing is, my marshals are right there, like only a few feet behind me and everything. It's not like I need a pair of binoculars to see the drummer or something. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
so I've played, big festivals and stuff like that. I mean, I like both. I like any, I don't really care. I love playing. So I don't care if I'm at a huge metal festival or a joint in Pittsburgh where they're selling pickled eggs behind the bar. You know what I mean? It's all cool with
Yeah.
me.
So how did you even get into guitar? I know it Jimi Hendrix was a huge influence on you, but was there other things that helped you like, get your like cut your teeth a little bit, you know?
Well, I mean, I played for a little while when I was like 10, but then I was like, this sucks, you know what I mean? So I stopped, and then I picked it up again when I was 14. And of course, growing up in the 70s, influenced by all the great guitarists in the 70s, Hendrix, Richie Blackmore,
Yeah.
and Michael Schenker, Uli John Roth with the Scorpions, Tommy Bolin, Robin Trower, Hendrix, yeah, Sabbath. I saw I remember seeing Zeppelin, when I was a kid, Madison Square Garden, 1977. So, and I also loved Al Di Meola quite a bit. I discovered him in my last year of high school. And then I went to Berkeley for a while, never graduated or anything like that. And then it just kind of went from there. And then when I was at Berkeley, I played a bunch of classical stuff and some jazz and fusion stuff. But then, because that's kind of what you had to do at the time I was there. And then like somewhere around 1981, I decided I was only going to play hard rock and metal, and it was the smartest move I ever made. I look back and like a lot of the jazz and fusion stuff maybe was a waste of my time. Not that that kind of music isn't awesome, but the classical thing was quite beneficial for me. So if I was to look back, but yeah, and then it just kind of went from there.
Did the jazz like influence help shape your writing style at all? Because I know jazz is
No,
way different.
no, not really. I mean, since I'm on the faculty at Berkeley, do I have to know all of these, insanely fancy chords? Yes, but so I have all this knowledge, but I use my musical knowledge and theoretical background to help create the music I love. You know.
So I guess you write for yourself then, and if you love it, in theory, the fans will love it as well.
Yeah, I just kind of do my thing. You know what I mean? Like Quentin Tarantino. Yeah, not that I'm comparing myself to Tarantino as an artist, but he said I want to make movies that I want to watch. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So I kind of make records I would like to listen to. You know?
So then when you come up with a riff, and say you sit down and you come up with a riff, how do you decide then if it's a Joe Stump riff or if it's an Alcatraz riff? Is it just a feel or?
Well, it just kind of I just have a bunch of different stuff. I'm just writing stuff, and then sooner or later, it finds its way somewhere. It'll be appropriate for something. And usually, if something's an instrumental, I can kind of it kind of goes in that direction. You know what I mean? But there are I do have like I just said, I finished recording a new instrumental record, and there's some super strong riffs on that it's like, oh wow, maybe I should have saved that for something else. Nah, it's my record. I'm keeping that for me. You know. So yeah, it finds its way to it finds its way to a proper home sooner or later. I don't really. I just go wherever, and I don't sit down and try. Usually, anything I come up with, it's completely organic. It just kind of comes to me. Inspiration strikes, and I go wherever the music's that I go wherever the music. I follow wherever the music's going. You know.
And when you started off back when you were like, when you found Al Di Meola, and did you were you in like as fast and speedy as you were back then as you are now back then, or was that something you picked up later in your guitar career?
Well, if you were to listen to if you were to listen, I made my first record when I was like the first record I did was late '80s, and I was in this metal band Trash Broadway. So if you were to listen to some of the cuts on the Trash Broadway record, and then you were to listen to my first record, Guitar Dominance, in 1993.
Yeah.
And then you listen to like Diabolical Ferocity and Take No Prisoners and Tower of Babel. It's not like I was a bum when I was younger, but I'm far much more. Everything's far more developed. My touch, my tone, my articulation. But was I pretty badass in my 20s? At times.
Yeah.
I had a reputation. That's how I got the job at Berkeley. It had nothing to do with being a student there or going there. They just needed somebody that shredded, and I was the dude. I was the dude in this particular area. So it's like that's how I got the job, just on my reputation alone. Had nothing to do with with having gone to school there or any of that nonsense.
Interesting. I thought it would have been, because of your previous tenure.
No, I never graduated or anything like that. I don't have any kind of degree or anything like that. Yeah, associate, from college dropout to associate professor.
It sounds like you really don't need a degree. You're doing quite fine on your own.
Yeah, well, I'm extremely grateful for my modest level of success, as I like to say.
Yeah, well, I just started guitar a couple years ago and I struggle profusely at it. Like I'm just horrible, but I have fun in the process. Like you said about being 15, like to me, I get the same feeling in my fingers as using like a Nintendo controller. So I get that same gratification. So I just enjoy the journey. But I often wish, like now that I'm older, is it going to be harder for me to gain speed,
No, I mean, just like anything, one thing I tell everybody, just like anybody can get into shape, it doesn't matter. You go, you work out, you go to the gym, you get a personal trainer, you work out at home, you do whatever it is. Anybody can gain speed. It's just like anything. You put the time in, and yeah, in fact, there's a dude that if you're ever looking for lessons, one of my old students is an excellent player, and he lives in the Berg. His name is Todd Seitz.
Like Sikes?
Sietz, I believe.
Okay.
Or maybe Seitz. But Todd Seitz, yeah, you'll see him on Instagram and stuff. But yeah, tell him you did an interview with me. I mean, he's still he texts like a lot of my old students still keep in touch with me. You know what I mean? Like all the time, I'll get like texts from him. Or the other thing was cool when I played in Pittsburgh, he came to the show, and after we went to the bar and threw a couple back, when I was hanging out with him, I played in Denver. Like another one of my guys came out to see me there. I was in I was playing a show in Germany. One of my students that lives in old students that lives in Austria came to the show. So it's cool to run into guys, and then I run into these guys, and I remember them as my students. And like I was playing with the Purple Band a few weeks ago. Ran into one of my old guys that studied with me quite a while, and he's got like a 14-year-old daughter now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, how long? Because it doesn't seem like long. How long ago did you study with me? Oh, it was like early 2000s. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah, and it's like I was just like Bonded by Blood turned 40 this year. And I remember buying that as a kid, and you think back and you're like, man, that's 40 years old. I guess I aged 40 years too, you know?
Yeah, yeah, like Bonded by Blood. In fact, like the band Trash Broadway, we were on tour. We were signed to Torrid Records,
Okay.
which put out Bonded by Blood.
Yeah.
They had Exodus, and they had more progressive thrash band from Jersey called Hades. And then they had this kind of punky band called like somewhat punkier thrashier band called Mucky Pup.
Oh, I
And
know them.
yeah, like and so we were there more like more commercial kind of metal projects. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so that was my first record. It was kind of interesting. The guy that ran the two guys from New York, they were like from kind of Mount Vernon, which is kind of near New Rochelle, right outside, maybe a half hour outside of New York City, in the suburbs and
Okay.
like Westchester County, I believe. And I learned quite a bit about the business from those guys. It was and even the guy said to me, he goes, Joe, I don't know about the rest of these guys, but you will continue on and have a long career in the business.
Yeah. Well, he wasn't wrong.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, he was a pretty sharp dude. Like, he could hear things, and like, a lot of that next wave of metal where you had like bands I think he was the one that brought Prong over to Epic. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
or he was originally wanted to sign Biohazard before they signed with somebody else. So he was kind of on the cutting edge of some things, he wasn't just a record company yes dude.
Now, being that Torrid is so close to New York, is that how you ended up on Torrid? Just from being in New York with them?
No, no, I was living up here with the Pilgrims at the time, and I still am, and no, it was like completely old school where like you had like where I didn't do the singer did all this, but you had like a press kit, with
Yeah.
talked about nonsense in the band, on like a little folder, and then we had a cassette demo, and you mailed your cassette demo into all the labels, and then the label called like the singer. And said we're interested in signing you guys. It was kind of cool. I remember like thinking about those days. I remember there was a special thing, one of the, and they don't have those as much anymore. Maybe they have them on podcasts and shows and stuff. But, on the radio, there was a college radio station where they had like a metal show every Sunday called Nasty Habits. And I remember hearing Trash Broadway on that. They were playing like one of the tunes off the cassette demo, and it kind of a cool thing. The first time you actually hear yourself on the radio, you know what I mean? So I remember like that like it was yesterday.
So did you get to like being on Torrid with those guys? Did you get to hang out with them back in the day or like Exodus?
Exodus? No, no. Those guys were all out in San Francisco and stuff like that. And we were
Yeah.
on the East Coast, so
Makes
it's
sense.
not. We never really met any of the bands on the label and stuff.
Yeah, I remember the 80s, and it was such a different time in music. There's a lot more money too in music.
Yeah, yeah, and there was so many that you had so many metal labels too.
Yeah.
So like a huge, tons and tons of them. You know what I mean? Like putting out like all these different subgenres of metal. You know what I mean? So it was a great time for all for all genres of metal.
And and like he said, like he knew you would go somewhere. Like, do you think because maybe you're more of like a neoclassical player? To me, I feel that neoclassical shredding or just neoclassical metal is kind of like more towards the classics, like Bach or Vivaldi or Locatelli, and so they'll hang around forever. Whereas like thrash will just go through periods, you know?
Well, I mean, metal is to a certain extent, many forms of metal, and it could be any such many of the classic subgenres of metal. Trends will come and go, but metal will always be there. There's always going to be fans of metal.
As
You
long as
know,
I'm alive.
yeah, and there's always fans of classic metal, and because some people, some guys will say, "Oh yeah, I used to play metal, but I grew out of it." It's like what I'm not. It's a good thing Steve Harris or James Hetfield didn't grow out of it. You know what I mean? I didn't
Yeah.
grow out of it either. You know what I mean? I've been all over the world. You know what I mean?
I
So,
just
so,
saw, go ahead. I just saw Marty Friedman like a year ago, and I'm like, Marty, come back to metal.
yeah, was he playing metal when you saw him?
He was opening. The openers were Trauma out of San Francisco. I don't know if you remember Trauma. I think they were Cliff Burton's original band before he went to
Oh wow.
Metallica, and then it was Marty Friedman and like his Japanese band, and then he opened for Queensryche, and he played like Tornado of Souls,
Yeah,
and
he kind of puts it in like he's playing one of his tunes, and then all of a sudden he'll go into like the solo section of Tornado with Souls.
he played a lot of like I think off of like Dragon's Kiss, and
Oh, that's his first record. Yeah, so a bunch of that must have been yeah. I mean, a lot of us he did a lot of those more new agey kind of instrumental records, but a bunch of his records a bunch of his other records, I believe, like Inferno and Music for Speeding and Dragon's Kiss and stuff. Still doing the metal thing.
yeah, yeah. I tell you what, even like when he doesn't play metal, like even the J-pop or whatever he refers to it as, that's impressive still, even though it's not metal, Guy
Oh
got
yeah,
chops.
yeah. He's a great player. He's a great player. And been around. He's been at it a long time. You know what I mean?
So are there any shredders that you still look up to? I mean, because at your level, you're at the top of the game still.
Well, all my favorite players are all the European metal masters: Yngwie, Richie Blackmore, Gary Moore, Michael Schenker, Uli John Roth. But I love tons of I love tons of guitar players. I love Wolf Hoffman from Accept. I like Andy LaRock that plays with the King. I like I love Andy's playing. I like Hank Sherman and Mike Weed from Merciful Fate. I
Yeah.
like there's this guy he plays very much in the Yngwie kind of Blackmore style. He's from Argentina. This guy Walter Giardino, and his band is Rata Blanca. And
I'm
Walter
sorry, say that again, please.
Yeah, the guy's name's Walter Giardino, and Walter plays with Rata Blanca, Rata, and then Balanca, and they're from Argentina. They did one record in English, but they sing all in Spanish. But Walter's a killer player. Yeah, like an awesome record if you want to hear. Doogie White actually sings on the English version of one of their records called The Forgotten Kingdom. But Walter's awesome, kind of in the same vein as me, Blackmore, heavily influenced by Blackmore and Yngwie and stuff. He's an awesome player, awesome dude too. I've like hung with him a few times, but he doesn't speak much English being from Argentina. So we usually talk through like another dude.
So I started this about a year ago, and I have like a lot of growth in or like in the South America, whether it's Central or South. I'm really big in Venezuela and Costa Rica, and I'm finding there's so many talented players down there and talented bands that just need the exposure. It's just amazing that there's so much undiscovered greatness still out there.
Oh yeah, there are plenty of great players out there, plenty of great players and great bands out there. You know what I mean? But I mean, like down there, it's not even. But like also down there, like it's a hotbed of metal too. You know what I mean? So like one of my old students, I played a guest solo on his band's record. I forget the name of the band, but he plays in a death metal band in I believe Chile. You know what I
Okay.
mean? And so and they do pretty well down there. So they all kind of especially the heavy stuff, the extreme metal,
Yeah.
tech death metal, thrash stuff, all big down there as well.
I love it. I love discovering these unknown bands. To me, it's like a scavenger hunt of greatness.
Yeah, well, that was the cool thing. Like, I was always drawn to like these more like when I first discovered Ingve, he was more of an underground dude, and I had the Rising Force, the first predominantly instrumental Rising Force record when it was a Japanese import. When he was just more of an under the radar kind of cult guy. So I loved all these guitar players that where you really had to search out to find their stuff.
The thing that grabbed me from Yingwei the most was when he did, I can't remember the actual name of it, but when he played with the Japanese Philharmonic Orchestra.
Yeah, yeah, he did the concerto record,
Yeah,
and he did a studio, but he did the studio version, which I believe was in Prague with the Czech orchestra, and then he did the full on concert with the Japanese Philharmonic in Tokyo. And that was like a complete crowning for him, a real crowning achievement. And of course, everybody's seen the footage. He's killing it. And I've seen Ingve many times. I saw him for the first time at L'Amour's back in 1985,
yeah.
before Marching Out even came out. And then but I've seen him just about every tour since. If he's around and I'm not touring, I try to catch at least a few shows.
I caught him maybe 2, 3 years ago when he was on the G5, G7, G3.
Oh, you know what? It might have been that Generation X.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah, like with Steve Vai's thing with Nuno and Zach and Tosin Abasi. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that was exact concert. And man, that was the first time I saw Tosin, and man, that guy is mind blowing.
Yeah. Yes.
So
Yeah. Yes.
so different.
Tosin, yeah. Yeah. He's insane. Tosin's like he's a game. He's reinventing the wheel and changing the game. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tosin, and in fact, one of my old students, Ivan Chopik, is Tosin's partner in Abasi Guitars in Tosin's guitar company.
Yeah. Have you played one of those guitars?
Tosin did a thing at Berkeley, and Ivan was with him. So I came, I came to say hi to Ivan. I came to say hi, and Tosin put one of them in my hands, and I was like, you know what I mean? It is like a space age. It's like the guitar of the future. You know what I mean? I'm sticking with it. Like I thought it was awesome, but I'm more of a fan of the guitars of the past. You know what I mean? As I tell all my students, I'm old school because I'm old. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
I don't even like 24 frets. I'm more of a 21, 22 fret guy, and I'm still playing a Strat. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I saw the video you did of the 1974, I want to say it was a Blackmore Strat that you picked up over in
Oh
Japan.
yeah, like 72. Yeah,
72.
the 72 Strat. Yeah, I bought that from a company there's this crazy Strat company in Tokyo called HI Guitars, Strato Crazy, and they had it for sale. And it was like, if you're a Richie Blackmore fanatic, this is the guitar for you. And it was like, it was a process, because like when you buy the guitar, I mean, they were great, very, very reputable, kind of world renowned vintage Strat shop. And anytime I do a tour, I always take a bunch of the cash I make on the tour, and I sock it away somewhere, because I'm going to buy something cool with it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna pay I'm not gonna pay a bill or something stupid with it. I'm going to buy something where it's like, okay, well, after the grind of this particular tour, you know what I mean? I'm getting this. So
Yeah.
so that Strat was something I bought with my touring money, and and I love it. For the Blackmore thing, it's awesome.
That's what I figured. You'd have to use it for that, right?
Oh yeah, I play it with the Purple Band. I play it with the Rainbow Band. It sounds killer. You know what I mean? Like it's more of like that kind of machine than a full on, neoclassical shred machine.
Okay. But you still use the Strats though for the neoclassical shredding,
Oh
right?
yeah, like I have a hookup with ESP. So most of the time when I'm doing my solo thing or touring with Alcatraz, I'm playing my ESPs. But also with my tribute bands, I have like a ton of Fenders, so I'll play. I got something like 60 guitars.
Oh
You
my.
know, so, yeah. So I have a ton. Hold on one sec. I'll kind of turn the.
Oh man, that's quite the arsenal.
Yeah, that's only like a handful of them. You know what I mean? They're
Yeah.
all over the house. I got cases over there. In fact, what my cat is sleeping in the sleeping in the other room, and she's sleeping on her big giant pillow is on like a big pile of like maybe like 20 something guitars
Oh
in
man.
cases.
And she doesn't even know, you know?
She doesn't care. She doesn't care, dude. She knows it's a comfortable spot.
Yeah, I got two, and I got an ESP and a Jackson, and I absolutely love the ESP. Great tone, great feel. It's such a quality instrument.
Yeah, ESP is killer. You know what I
Oh
mean?
man, great.
Yes, talking about Exodus, that's how Gary Holt came over to ESP. I believe he's friends with Kirk Hammett, and Kirk picked up one of Gary Holt's guitars before he was with the ESP, and he's like, "Man, I got to take you over. You can't be playing this thing anymore. I'm taking you over to ESP." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's been there for like quite a while.
Yeah.
And he's got a bunch of really cool models from them.
My favorite is he has the one with his blood that it's called like liquid lava, and they mixed his blood
Yeah,
paint.
that's really cool looking, that red one. Yeah, with the red
Oh,
pickups and everything. Yeah, it looks awesome. And then I like his new V with the black with the red pickups as well. You know what I mean? I think that looks great as well.
yeah, sharp stuff.
Oh yeah.
Well, hey, I hate to cut it short. We're running out of time, and I guess you probably have interviews lined up all day. So thank you so much for stopping by. I'm a huge fan, and it means a ton to even talk to you.
Thanks for Mike. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun. It was awesome talking to you.